Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to tonight's meeting. We will start the meeting with an invocation from Pastor Stephan Ballou from Crossway Church, and then John White will lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, everybody.
Please bow your heads. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather in prayer this evening. We thank you for your blessings and your protection over St. Charles County, and we just ask for your guidance and wisdom over this council and this meeting this evening, and thank you for your blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
Okay, moving on to public comments. We'll allow 3 speakers per topic, pro and con, 3 each. And you're allowed to come up and talk to us about anything going on in the county or anything you want to talk about. First speaker, please. Anybody? We'll let him go first. He stood up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, A.C. Dienoff, County Resident and Public Advocate. First of all, I'd like to express my deepest condolences and sympathies to the Lomar family. As you all know, a circuit judge and associate circuit judge who is very ethical, very fair, very honorable, and one of the best judges that this county has ever had, passed away this past Wednesday. I've not had an opportunity to look out back to see if the flags are at half-mast, but I would ask the county executive to order that executive order. And if it is against the county charter, as I asked for it to be done as a former commissioner passed away a few months ago, and I was denied that, I think we need to really honor and respect our former county officials and people who dedicated their lives and their hearts and their beings to make St. Charles County a better place to live. But if it's out of the preview of the county charter and the county executive, I ask that the county executive contact the governor's office to get that approval and that authority to fly the county's flags at half-mast. The other thing that's very concerning is a recent settlement that the county entered into with Laclede Gas. We paid over $800,000 in a settlement over a 6-year court battle with Laclede Gas. Let's look at this and analyze it. We are all taxpayers. We are all ratepayers. Basically, you put it on the citizens' back, and it just isn't fair. $150,000 relocation of a gas line should have been done by the county, or we should have done what the last step was bring in a mediator to resolve the issue between the county government and Laclede Gas. But the county chose to be stubborn, chose to hold its ground, and exert its power and authority. There was a circuit court case that was filed in circuit court that was appealed to the appellate court and eventually appealed to the Missouri Supreme Court, and the county was overruled by the Missouri Supreme Court. Then Laclede filed the U.S. District Court case that went to the Federal Appeals Court panel, and it was upheld in an injunction in 2013. Then a mediator came to the settlement and came to the table to bring the parties together to pay over $800,000 in a settlement. Does this county council know how many deputies that we could have hired? Does this county council know that we could have used that money for good purposes, good stewarded the taxpayers' money, and for a lot better items to further our county and the quality of life here in St. Charles County? Where was the county council when this was taking place? Why would you allow something like this to ream on for so long and take so long in the courts, which the attorneys are the ones who get rich in the long run? I ask in the future that we try to bring in a mediator right off the bat. And I don't know what's going on in county government, but to pay out that type of settlement is just ridiculous. Thank you.
Okay, could I have the next speaker, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Rich Musler, M-U-S-L-E-R. I'm with Musler Engineering here in St. Charles. Joining me this evening is Mr. Dennis Beldner, who is the new developer for a subdivision known as Jackson Estates, which is at Dietrich Road and Missouri Highway 61. We have filed an amended development plan for Jackson Estates. That is the subject of your bill a little bit later this evening. I thought I would make some very brief comments concerning the amended plan and what the changes are from the current approved plan. First of all, the current plan contains 101 multifamily residential units on 10.79 acres, and we propose to eliminate the multifamily component of this project. The current plan also has a fairly substantial amount of commercial area, 18.84 acres. We propose to diminish that to 1.65 acres. In place of those, we are proposing to add 84 single-family residential lots. So there are, in addition to the 84 we're proposing, there are already approved 225 single-family lots that would bring the total to 309. The changed area is 28.82 acres. The non-changed area remains at about 61 acres. The change density decreases substantially. It would now be proposed to be 3.09 dwelling units to the gross acre. So, unaccustomed as I am to proposing something of this nature, we are proposing in this case to trade 101 multifamily dwelling units, approximately 156,000 square feet of commercial buildings for, or instead, 84 single-family residential lots. And that's kind of a highlight of the amended development plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Where are we going to hold questions?
Yeah, we hold questions. When the bill comes up, people are welcome to ask you questions from up here on the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers on bill? That is Bill 42, what is that?
19.
4219. Harry?
Good evening, Council, and thank you for your time. Harry Bogart, 1700 Dietrich Road. I want everybody to understand that we're not against the development of this. It's gone far enough now that it needs to proceed to a point of completion, rather than anybody that's been out there knows what it looks like. It looks like a war zone hit out there. So, I commend the developer, which I think we are working with a good developer at this point in time, of removing the multifamily units and replacing them with a much lower density of the housing instead of the multifamily units, and reducing the commercial amount there. I do think there are still some concerns. Primarily, I think the transportation issue will become an issue at some point in time. And I would like to clarify, if I may, and I'm asking the question. Tonight, we are only discussing the 28 acres at the eastern portion of the development. Is that correct?
I don't know, we'll be able to ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be one concern that we have, and we'd like to, proceed with that. I don't think I have any objection. I met with our community group. We've got about 20 people that we met with, and we all discussed that, and there are density concerns, but not with the issue of the 28 acres that we're discussing, what I believe is just tonight. The only other thing is, I know when the development was first initiated several years ago, there was letters sent out, and I received a letter inviting for public opinion and that. And in our group meeting, several of those people indicated that they didn't know anything about the P&Z meeting. And I would not have known anything about it had I not been called by one of my neighbors to ask me if I would attend. I just, and I said, well, I haven't seen or heard anything from it. I didn't get a letter. And they said, well, that there was a little sign stuck in the ground down by Dietrich Road. I went down there and looked for it, and it had blown over 2 days after it had been put up. So I did go get it, brought it back and put it where it was more visible, because they had it set right at the entrance point of 61, and people aren't looking for a sign, they're looking for a chance to be able to get on the highway without getting run over. So would have asked that, I don't know what the difference was. I don't know if there's a distance range that you do have to go with that or not, but would have liked to have had more people know about that. So anyway, I can talk more later, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers on Bill 4219?
Hello, I'm Bruce Bandy, 1919 Dietrich Road. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to y'all. I would implore you all, when reviewing this, to pay very close attention to the density calculation and the methodology that's used. What space of the aggregate acreage is used or included in that density calculation. I can appreciate that we're going from, X number of multifamily units down to a lower number of single-family units, but I still feel that it's grossly out of line with the area. We've always felt that way. That was a concern back at the beginning of this whole thing. It's still a concern for the neighborhood as a whole. Most of the neighbors that I've spoken with, they've kind of thrown their hands up and said, there's no point in fighting it. Their voices weren't heard before. They don't feel like there's any point in coming and trying to address this. So my concern would be that you would carefully examine the way the density calculation is made. Are streets allowed to be included? Are common spaces, the MBR sewer treatment plant? Just how are those densities calculated? And is the current proposal in line with those rules and guidelines? The other concern, of course, has and always will be the traffic and the death trap that we've got on Highway 61 there. I saw Lincoln County, in conjunction with MoDOT, take some very progressive steps in eliminating at-grade crossings from the border all the way north of Troy proper. And I think that if Lincoln County can accomplish that, then I think that St. Charles County can too. And I would ask that you all make that emphasis and a high top priority. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other speakers on Bill 4219? Okay, moving on. Are there any other speakers on any other topic? Okay, that concludes public comments. Moving on to the oral report from the county executive.
Mr. Chairman, I have no report. Do you have some information about the posters outside?
I do, I was gonna, do you want to talk about it?
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure you got it.
Yeah.
I was going to say something, but we went ahead and just gave it to you, and you can do it later on.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, okay. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would like to remove the engineering services for Birdie Hill Roads extension and also the architectural and engineering services related to the renovation of the jail.
Okay,
Second.
second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Are there any other items?
Motion for approval of the remaining portion.
Second.
Second, all those in favor of approval of the remainder of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, Joe?
Sunday, I had my brother-in-law over the house, and he's a retired St. Charles City police officer, so he spent a lot of time on traffic. He also happens to live on Birdie Hill Road. And when I saw that this was an extension, I was wondering how they were going to extend it, and I started to look at the transportation improvement plan, but I didn't see a lot in there about it. But after reading the details of it, it's just basically we're spending $250,000 to get the conceptual idea. If we did extend that road, how would we do it? I then pulled up Google Earth, and there is a ton of houses south of Birdie Hill Road that looks like it would take a bunch of houses to be, have to buy a lot of houses to do that. So I guess my question is, before we spend the $250,000, is this something we really need, and is this something those residents want, and are we willing to spend the money that it's going to take to do this project?
Is that a question for Mr. Gryfus?
I would say the administration might have an idea.
Yeah,
about it.
I'll let John come up and talk about it, but generally, that's why we're doing a study to see how many of those houses we would have to take if we in fact decide to go through there, which is probably going to depend on what the cost would be. But it's not just, no matter how you get from here to there, the goal here that John's been working on for a long time is somehow get a roadway between Birdie Hills where it stops and Page, okay? So that people can actually go south there. People living in along Birdie Hills Road, now they have to go through the community college down Mid-Rivers and everything. I mean, the ultimate goal is to establish that connection, and I think this study is going to look at numerous ways that could be done, and then we would be comparing the cost and ultimately bringing you a recommendation.
It's a good
Did I pretty much say that, John? Did I say that right?
You did. I mean, the fundamental problem that we're having is, and we predicted it would be before the completion of Phase 3 Page Avenue, is that Mid-Rivers Mall Drive and Route K near Page is getting a lot of congestion. And there's 3 miles between those two interchanges on Page Avenue. And the goal of this is to see is there a way to get additional connection right in the middle, whether that be from a Birdie Hills extension, extending Motherhead or Goodenmuth Road. Some way can we get a connection to Page Avenue right there in the middle. The main concept, the Birdie Hills extension, was studied about 10 years ago. And so that's one reason why it's kind of picked up this name as we're going forward with this next study if it gets approved.
I think Mr. Corona's question is, though, is it unrealistic to assume that we can make it to point A to point B without taking out, what, 50, 20, 100 houses at $200,000 apiece? If that's the case, then why are we wasting $250,000? Isn't that your question?
Sort of. I mean, I just looked at it. Is there, before we start a project like that, is there any pie in the sky figure you can put for this project, what it's going to cost?
I think the study back in 2003 identified that this cost of this extension, including a new interchange with Page Avenue, would be in that range of about $20 million. So there is, I don't know, you threw out the numbers of 50 or 100, or I don't think there's that many homes. I think they're looking at maybe more of the magnitude of a dozen or less. But that's really the purpose of the study, is to see if there's a route that would minimize those impacts. There's floodplain and floodway issues that would make this a difficult project. But the fundamental goal is that if you look at Mid-Rivers from the college south, that section's getting pretty congested. K, right at Page Avenue, where you got the interchange, quite a bit of congestion. And then going through Old Town Cotterville, again, quite a bit of congestion. And so is there a way to distribute that traffic and get more of those folks on the Page in a more direct route? And so it's been looked at a very high level. $250,000 will get a little more detailed and determine exactly how many houses are you looking at? What are the floodplain issues? How feasible is this? I know it seems like a lot of money to determine how feasible is a project, but it's a complicated project in a lot of ways.
Has the road board been informed about this? Have they looked at this project? Do they think it's worth pursuing? I'm just curious.
They've looked at it at a high level, but they've not seen the project manager of this, and the administrator would be the county highway department. So they have not submitted an application for construction or further design to the road board for their full review. But in a concept level, a study phase, they thought it was worth a while making an investment.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a
Yes, Don.
The staff has looked at this project for the last couple of years with an eye towards somehow in some time completing this project. It actually has its roots in some studies that the city of Cotterville has done a number of years ago. And in fact, the cost of this analysis would probably be higher, except for the fact that George Butler and Associates was the engineering firm that helped perform some of the work originally. So they're very familiar with it. There are a number of alternatives here. We're not making the assumption at all that we're taking houses down at this point in time. We're obviously trying to avoid those sort of things. But the initial analysis has to be, what are the alternatives? What are the cost of those alternatives? What's the implication of those alternatives? And once you have the answers to those questions, then we and you can make some decisions about going forward on the project. If you've been in downtown Cotterville at all, around anywhere from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 p.m. in the evening or in the morning, conversely, you would realize that it is a mess and people cannot get through that town. You have the largest Catholic parish in the Archdiocese located there, and when that school lets out or convenes in the morning, it's a holy mess. And that's why we're doing this in part, is to relieve that congestion in Cotterville. We've spoken with the mayor about this. I think they're excited about the possibility as well.
Yes, Steve.
Just a further point in response to Councilman Cronin. It may or may not, I mean, I don't know how many houses it would take, but I know for sure that half of it we could do without taking any houses at all. So we may end up just doing the half, that would not require any houses. I mean, there's just a whole lot of different options, and as Don said, we've met with the mayor, and they're real interested in seeing what they do come up with. And we'll be glad to show you some of the things that we think might come out of this study, if you'd like to look at those before the next meeting.
Well, see, I think we have a pretty good resident expert sitting over there in a uniform about that area that might have something to say about it, too. You think this would be something to be helpful to the residents down there, Scott?
Very much so.
Okay, then that's all my questions are answered.
Okay, any other questions on Birdie Hills Road?
I don't have a question. I have more of a comment. It makes sense with the explanation, but what was in our packet, I was prepared to just vote no on it. One sentence, $259,000, we want to do a study. For us that don't live in that area, that don't understand what it was for, there wasn't enough here to vote on, in my opinion. Makes sense tonight, something we need to do, absolutely. I think it's looking forward and being, alleviating traffic concerns, all of that is true. But I would have rather gotten that information, that dialogue with the packet rather than waiting until tonight and scratch my head last night when I was reading the packet and trying to figure out what it was really for. Thank you.
Did you want to hold this vote?
No, it makes sense with the explanation.
Okay, is that all on Birdie Hills Extension?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Joe, on the next topic.
On the next, I read through the packet on this one, and basically it's a bunch of changes to the jail about basically taking out walls, adding walls, welding up a door, adding a door. And that's a pretty new building, so I'm sure we've got blueprints, and we've got a new, eager, young, talented construction manager. And my question was, do we really need to spend $200,000 on architectural and engineering services when we could probably take those blueprints that we've got with a construction manager and mark them up and say, put a door here, lock that door down, build a wall here, take that wall out? Yeah, the other thing is when that building was designed, I think it was pretty poor design to put all the communication equipments in the basement, so when the jail cells flood, all the water goes down there. So I've questioned architects on stuff that I've had built before, and in general, I trust a construction manager more than I trust an architect about doing things that make sense. So with that being said, Mr. Bextramuller, I'd like to see what you think about all that, okay? If he's here, or
Is he here?
He's not here tonight.
or I think the director of the jail is here?
Larry's here.
Larry's here? Do you think that's something that we can handle internally? Do you think that's something we need to spend $200,000 for an architect to do? Mr. Crawford?
Can I ask a question in
Yeah.
between that question? Do you guys have a budget in mind for this project? Larry, or?
Not a firm budget. That's part of what the study would show, what systems were going to be affected and how much
Well,
how
do
much
you
it was
have a
going to be
budget,
cost.
Joanne?
We do to somewhat, yes. There's some long history to this. So back in 11 and 12, Chuck was looking at the fact that the central control, which is the electronic brain of moving all the security around in the jail, was badly out of date and needed to be redone. And there was an estimate that it was going to be somewhere $40,000 to $50,000 to redo that. It was just something that Mike worked on. It was before Simon got here. Jennifer may actually know more about it than I do, or Don, from those days. Then we ran into a problem. The medical area is badly out of date and undersized, and is frankly, from what the nurses tell me, dangerous in the way it's laid out in terms of their safety with an inmate. And so they had been asking for somebody to look at that. There's a few modifications that'll be required for the muster room if we do something with medical. There's a few things that need to be done in booking. There's also a badly out-of-date communication system. The analog wires that are in the walls just don't work anymore. And so that has to be fed to central control. The facilities director had done some estimates, figuring this was somewhere in the 600 to 800,000 range to do the fixes. That number's just off. The other problem we ran into when we started to get real last year about looking at what we needed to do there is there have been some modifications made to the jail, and nobody's paid attention to the electric distribution over the years, in the 30 years since the thing was built. So we've got to look. There's sufficient power coming into the jail, but as to the various panels that are around the building, there's a question about whether or not there's sufficient power in certain areas.
But Joanne, my question is what is the budget? I mean, do you have an idea?
Yeah, we're figuring that the total is going to be somewhere in the $1.5 million range.
Okay, so my question would be, in an architectural world, isn't it realistic to think that 7 to 10% is what an architectural fee is? And
This is a max of 7.5%, and it's 7.5%.
We bought new intercoms years back, I know, because I remember Chuck saying he couldn't get parts for the old ones, okay?
Right.
So this is a more computer communications you're referring to then in the building?
You bought intercoms for 2 floors? Not quite 2 full
Oh,
floors?
really, only most of the third floor, not the first and second or the fifth floor.
And I saw something that Mr. Bextramuller had sent out where he was actually going to meet with department heads and talk to them about projects within their departments.
Right.
I was pretty impressed with that. I thought for a new hire, that was pretty impressive. He's doing that. Has he talked to Mr. Crawford to see how much of that stuff that could be done in that respect versus having it hired out and with
I
the
can let
contractors?
Larry answer that, but I can tell you that he's been over there and toured all these areas looking at this.
Yes, and he actually recommended a study, sort of a comprehensive study, to before we started this, to kind of make sure that we were not interfering with or not wasting money doing this when there were going to be other needs in the near future.
When you do this study, are you going to study the possibility of getting those communications systems out of that basement? Is this $1.5 million going to get that stuff out of there?
The communication stuff that's in the basement is related to the EOC. There is some other telephone equipment down there for the county and that type of thing, but that's in a drier area. The stuff that's been flooding is the Emergency Operations Center, and that gets solved when we do the new building.
On this, Joanne, was there only one bidder?
No, this was a request for qualifications, and there were 5.
Well, how come there's only one number?
As you know,
It's a
after
negotiated price.
you go through the process of the most qualified, then you negotiate a price with the entity that is found to be the most qualified.
Ross and Barazini, I think if I'm saying that correctly, they
Ross
did
and
the
Barazini.
study on the sheriff's department, or which is now the police department,
Uh-huh.
okay? I saw that they were one of the bidders, but they weren't deemed qualified. They could, I thought it was kind of unusual that they were qualified to do the design, the future design of the sheriff's department ground, or the police department's ground, but they weren't qualified to look at the jail.
They met specifications. They were interviewed as part of this. They just weren't chosen. The area of architectural and engineering that has to do with these secure jails is a very narrow field. And Larry was in on all the interviews of these folks and all the tours with folks that came over. Chiodini Architects has extensive background in dealing with jails and secure facilities.
Okay. You're good with these guys?
Yes, we narrowed it to 2. We narrowed it down and took the 2 best and then did further interviews, and this is what we came up with.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion for both?
Motion to vote?
On both?
Yes.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that has been approved. The agenda's been approved in full on the consent agenda. Moving on to bills for introduction.
Bill number 4219, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by Joe Cronin, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from C1 PUD Neighborhood Commercial District with Planned Unit Development Overlay District to R1D PUD Single Family Residential District with Planned Unit Development Overlay District, and amending the final development plan and approving a preliminary plat for Jackson Estates.
Oh, Mr. Cronin?
I think this bill is a work in progress, and I want people to know that even though my name is on it, it's because that's the custom of the council to put the councilman's name on it who represents that district. That being said, there's parts of this bill that I like, and there's parts of this bill that I don't like. And I've spoken quite in depth with Robert Myers today about it, and also with Mr. Bogart about it. And I think staff is right on about a couple things about this. When this was approved back in '04, they utilized a loophole that put the whole thing under a C1 PUD. And staff noticed that, and in this agreement to rezone or to reclassify the 28 acres, they pretty much say that this would allow the developer to proceed with the requested development while reassuring the public about future outcomes for development of the eastern third of Jackson Estates subdivision. If we could have that map up here again, Mr. Musler, I'd appreciate it, okay? Mr. Musler's plans for the eastern third, I don't think you'll find anybody that has any problems with. They got rid of the apartments, the commercial was reduced. It's basically an attribute to the development in that area out there by getting rid of the apartments and 90% of the commercial. Then that part that we're talking about is the green part. Right down the center where you see the street laid out, that's an existing part of the subdivision, okay? Where I think the big concern is on the west side, which would be your far left on that map. And I believe that's somewhere about half of the development. I think if staff thinks that it's a good idea to get rid of C zoning on the eastern side of this property, I think it's even a better idea to get rid of C1's PUD zoning on the western side of it. So I would like to talk to Mr. Myers and Mr. Musler more depth about doing this all at once and getting this done and getting rid of that C1 PUD zoning out there. I don't think any PUD that's surrounded by residential housing, whether it's Jackson Estates houses or the houses that are on 3-acre tracts on Dietrich, need to have a C1 zoning classification in the middle of them. The other thing I'm concerned about as well is the traffic. We're spending $12 million to put an overpass in on 61, just due south of this on Piney Road and 61. As a kid growing up out there was never a problem. But when Wentzville developed Piney Road with all those subdivisions, you start having people getting killed. And that's why we're spending the $12 million to keep that from happening. I want to make sure that we're not creating that same situation at Dietrich Road just a little while north of that. The traffic study that was done with this was done in 2004. I've asked county staff for a copy of that. And I would think that while the improvements on the eastern side will not warrant additional traffic modifications to Dietrich Road, when the western part of it gets developed, I think it would. And I would request at that time that we have a new traffic study done, since the old one is 11 years old. There's some other sundry details that I think need to be worked out. But I think that this bill is a work in progress, and I think with a little bit more work, we can actually get something that will be good for the county, good for the existing residents out there, and good for the residents of Jackson Estates as well. So that being said, if you've got questions specifically, I gave Robert a heads up on what I was going to be speaking about earlier today. And I've read it's pretty much in line with his staff recommendations in a couple points. So I think it might be good to listen to Robert about this as well. Okay.
Listen, you got a question for him? Or?
Well, about basically what we're talking about is where we're getting rid of the C1 zoning for the green area. Okay.
All the stuff to the left has already been approved, correct?
It's been approved, but under C1 PUD, what they did a loophole. And then I was told, because of the age of this, that PUD is pretty much now almost non-existent. They have to go back to the drawing board. So if we're getting rid of the C1 zoning for the green portion to protect the residents, I think we need to get rid of the C1 zoning for the white portion too, to protect the rest of the residents. So it's only fair.
Mr. Myers, could you come up here, please? Joe, are you through with your questions, or can I ask?
And the other thing would be about the traffic. If there is a need for traffic study, maybe County Highway can look at that. But I want to make sure we're not creating another death trap out there. Okay.
I got a question, or I got a couple of comments, and then you can ask some questions. So, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if this isn't approved, then it just reverts back to what it was, correct?
This is for about 28 acres.
The green, right. See up there, see the drawing up there?
Right.
Okay,
exactly.
So that's all we're talking about.
That's correct. Yeah, that area has expired in terms of their approved development plan.
So if nothing happens, if this doesn't pass, what happens?
They would need to go back to the drawing board and make a new proposal for something different.
Oh, so it doesn't go
location.
back to the apartments and all that other stuff?
No.
Okay. This project was a terrible project to begin with, back in 2004. It was in a bad location. It was in a rural area, part of the county, with no infrastructure. I was adamantly opposed to this then. I'm adamantly opposed to it now. There's no crossover. It's extremely dangerous to put more people and low-density housing in that area where we have crossover deaths on Highway 4061. That was one major reason why me and some, I can't remember if there was any other council members that were opposed to it, but I was. They have no sewer still to this day. It's on a treatment plant that doesn't even function. If I'm wrong, you guys correct me, but it has to be pumped out, right? It doesn't function, and that was another thing. There was no infrastructure there. So what is the plan for that?
They have a private sewage treatment plant. It's called an MBR plant. But essentially, the plant serves just this development.
No, I understand that, Robert, but it's not working right now. They have to pump it out with a truck.
Okay.
So is that something that this county has accepted, where we're just going to have sewage dumped into a big holding tank and we just pump it out, they randomly pump it out? Or, I mean, that's really not acceptable.
When they get up to, as I understand it, when they get up to 150 homes or thereabouts, they'll be able to turn on the plant, so to speak, and have that work as has been
Was that part of
authorized
the
to do.
original ordinance, though? Was that, I don't know if you guys remember this.
It was part of the original plan.
Yeah, so why, what my question is so was it part of the original plan just to pump it out like a holding tank, or was it part of the, I know you weren't around, but was it part of?
No.
Joe, it was the MBR plan.
I know it
We
was.
insisted it being MBR.
Joe, there's not enough flow going in there, so that's why they're doing the pump and haul.
But my question is, Don, is back then, we never agreed. It was supposed to be a functioning NBR
Correct.
treatment plant. We weren't told, and nor was it in the ordinance, that it was just going to be a holding tank. So at what point is this going to be functioning? When you get 150 homes? How many homes are in there now?
There'll be 80 new ones, so will that put it over the,
No, how many homes are in there right now?
I've forgotten the number exactly.
70.
So there's this subdivision to the left, that's all part of the NBR treatment plant, right?
Right.
And so is that subdivision halfway full, or where's that right now? Is it full to the left? I don't know, I'm talking about the white part.
Yeah, Plats 1 and Plats 2 are almost full now. When you drive down those streets, I was there a few weeks ago, and literally probably 20 houses were under construction. So there's maybe, I'm guessing, 50 homes that have been built and sold, and the rest are under construction. There's a couple of vacant lots that are not built on yet.
I mean, it's
At the
not,
end of the
no
cul-de-sac.
disrespect to you, because you're coming into this, I understand what you're doing, but the past developer, it's like, this is the best bad idea we got right now, you know? It's like trying to clean up a mess that was a mess to start with.
Where the existing homes are, Joe, are right down the middle. The big block on the left is not developed, and the property to the right, the shaded in green is not developed. The part that's developed is kind of an L-shaped piece that you kind of see on there right now.
Jackson
down the
Street
middle.
and Marathon Drive.
Yes. Okay.
Can Harold or Joanne or one of you guys, I don't know, Mr. Cronin is asking if they eliminate the C1, but that other parcel is really not part of the zoning. Is that legal for him to make that request?
Yes, it is. He's making a request to amend part of an already approved PUD, and he can stage the proposal and the development to address first the part that is shown in green. He can go ahead and do that.
Okay, so what are the lot sizes going to be? Mr. Musser, what are the lot sizes going to be on this new addition to the right? Not the densities, but the lot sizes, what are they going to be? The part that we're talking about.
Yeah, the part we're talking about is the colored part, as Councilman Cronin indicated. There are 3 different lot sizes that are depicted there. And I think these are color-coded and being the different lot sizes.
Is that the house color code?
I actually have it, if it'll help you, from 6,600 square foot to 27,000 square foot in size. So some pretty small, some almost, better than a half acre.
With the larger ones being that.
Does the county, Robert, have a zoning for 6,600 square foot lot sizes?
Under a PUD, you can vary the lot sizes, and that's all part of the PUD approval process.
Okay, but if we didn't have a PUD, the PUDs, though, it's a planned unit development if you're mixing it with all the other stuff, but just this portion here, if it was just to come to the council as a regular zoning issue, do we have 6,600 square foot lots?
I know we have 7,000. I'll look to see if we've got
That sounds
what our
extremely
smallest is.
small. I don't know if we've done that before.
And here's the thing, I'm okay with the 60, just personally with the 6,600. I'd rather see that than apartments there, okay? And I think the residents out there are the same way. I don't think there's a controversy about what you're doing on the east side. I think the controversy exists for the 2 main points are one thing. The people out there want that C1 pulled off their head, because even when you folks go to sell the houses in an eastern development, the eastern side of that development, I wouldn't want to buy those houses knowing that there's C1 right across the street of Jackson Estates Drive, okay? So I think your intention is probably to put those into residential anyway. All we're asking is that same residential PUD zoning for the west side as the east side. And that's what I would like to see, because I think that gives a lot of peace of mind to the folks that are living out there, living around it, and also they're going to be buying homes on the east side. The other thing is the traffic is a lot of concern. I don't want to see you folks having to spend a ton of money on traffic studies, but I don't want a bunch of people killed. I don't know how much County Highway can help us with that. I could ask for accident reports from Captain Todd, or I'm sorry, Chief Todd.
Whatever works.
Okay, about that. But we want to make sure this is safe too. And maybe it's a situation where when you folks do the west side, maybe we can, if the study says, well, 300 houses there will cause the need for a couple $1 million worth of improvements to that intersection, but maybe only 150 won't. Maybe the density needs to be changed on the west side down the road to eliminate traffic problems. I don't know those questions on the west side. I really like what you're doing on the east side. I just want to try to protect those folks out there from a death trap at the intersection like we've got at Piney Road now. And I think we owe it to the folks that live on Dietrich now and that live in Jackson now to get rid of that C1 zoning. That was not appropriate in 2004. That's not appropriate in 2015 in my book. You got C1 zoning surrounded by residential.
Dave?
I'm not certain what you keep referring to as the west side. Do you know what he's talking about?
The green side.
No, it's a white side.
Oh, the white side.
Left
The white side. I mean,
left of the road.
That's almost completely developed in single-family homes now.
No.
It's not.
If I could speak to that just for a moment, maybe I
Okay.
can clarify.
And then I have some other comments.
What's colored in green, that's the 28 acres, as Councilman Cronin indicated. That's the subject of the bill this evening. If you look right down the middle, and then across this street, this has already been developed, it's already been platted, the majority of it has already had homes built on it. These homes have been sold to home buyers. So when you look down the middle of this,
That's Jackson and Marathon.
yes.
Okay.
C1 PUD, and the majority of those lots have been transferred. They are not under the control of the developer. People have bought those homes. Now, I think what Councilman Cronin was talking about is over here. It's all proposed to be single-family residential as part of the C1 PUD plan. That is still the plan to develop that as single-family residential. And Mr. Myers did contact me earlier today to ask, would there be an objection to changing that to R1D PUD versus C1 PUD? And Mr. Beldner and I have discussed that, and the answer to that question is, we don't really care what you call it. Call it anything you want, because we're guided by the PUD plan. That's the plan we wish to follow. So if there is some comfort level in altering the underlying zoning from C1 PUD to R1D PUD, that's fine with us. Now, unfortunately, I can't speak for these folks that live in the middle, Councilman. You know, I don't know if the county can change the zoning category of those homes.
I see no
without
need to.
their permission. I don't know. I mean, that would be a question for Harold.
I see no need to tackle that portion because that's already built out. There's
Pretty
very
much
few
it is,
lots.
yeah.
I think we're just talking about the future on the west side, okay?
And if that were to change, as long as this plan is part of that underlying zoning change, then we're good with it.
Okay.
Dave, you got another question?
I guess my only other comment, I support the change that's being proposed here. I think we need to get this thing moving, so this has been an eyesore for a long time, and it still sits there like that. And to get this part developed, I think is going to be a large improvement. As far as the traffic on 4061, I don't know if we have any plans in the near future to build an overpass there, but it's something we might think about in the near future because we do have a county park on that road, and it would be nice for people that are going to the park not to have to cross 4061 in the current condition. Thank you.
I got a question. Robert, just to make sure this is clear, the PUD on the right side, the 20-something acres that we're speaking of, that's expired, correct?
The development plan expired, yes.
So we're basically talking about a blank slate right now. Mr. Cohen, you keep referring to the apartments that were there, but they don't have a choice to go back to that. So we're just talking about a blank plot, right? So by asking for the extremely small lots, they're not, I don't think that you're, how much the other lots aren't that small on either side. I don't know why you'd want to go with 6,600 square foot lots. It just seems so small, because we don't do that, especially when there's no infrastructure.
It's been a question, and this might be something we need help with Harold or Joanne, because we've had discussions about this before. When a PUD expires, okay, at that point in time, what are the developers or landowners' rights for future development for that property, okay? I've been told that's kind of a little bit of a gray area, and I don't know if that's a fair statement to say. But with the thing that I want to tell you is everything that I've heard from residents like Mr. Bogart, they're more concerned about the west side, they're more concerned about the traffic than they are anything else. They look at this and they think, oh my gosh, that looks better than what was proposed before. I also realize for this developer, for him to have the money to fix improvements down the road for that interchange to help out, he's got to make some money, and this looks like a pretty attractive development. And I have driven down Jackson Estates Drive and that, and I would say that's a very typical Wentzville-style subdivision for that area. My son lives on one in Piney Road, very similar to that. So I guess while I would like to see the lots bigger, I did see that there, and I don't quite understand. There must be a reason why you have some for 6,600 and some for 27,000. I guess you're going to have different size price range houses within that portion of the development. Mr. Musler?
Yes, sir. And I would be negligent if I didn't point out that the county has a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan for this particular area forecasts residential density in the 1 to 4 dwelling unit per acre range. The change area, the colored area that you're looking at with with some lots that are as small as 6,600, that density is 3.09. The area that you're speaking about, Councilman, on the west side, that density is 3.69. So the change area is actually a lower density than the western portion. But if you blend it all into this plan that you're looking at today, the overall density would be 3.5, which would be in keeping with the county's future land use plan. Now, you may not agree with the future land use plan, but that's the document that we're guided by.
Hold on a second. Joe, go ahead.
Mr. Musler, would it be instead of having them range from 6,600 to 27,000 square foot, I understand Mr. Brazel's concerns pretty good on this, but as long as you got the 84 lots in there and you had 84 building sites, could you not make the minimum maybe 10,000 and then take that 27,000 square foot lot and turn it down to 20,000? That'd be something. Could you not take the minimum and make it a little higher and the maximum size lot and bring it down a little lower and still get your 84 in there? Is that conceivable?
No.
No. Okay.
No, unfortunately, it's not.
Okay.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, because the lot size is certainly dictated by the lot widths.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you start altering lot widths, your overall lot count would be altered as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want to have a point of comparison, your point of comparison might be the county's R1E straight zoning category, which I believe is a 7,000 square foot lot. I think that's your smallest lot in straight zoning categories.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be pretty close to the R1E standard. Now, some of them are 6,600, but that's not far off from 7,000.
Are the 6,600 ones close to the highway? Are they down, or where are they located at in that subdivision?
So next to the highway, right?
They're the powder blue ones.
Okay. So they're mixed through the entire development?
They're scattered
Yeah.
throughout the development. And the different lot widths, different lot sizes are all scattered throughout that change area.
So the variation in size is probably different due to the topography and the roadways and the width of the front.
It's
fronts of the lot.
primarily a difference in lot width, which is based upon the house that the builder wants to build.
Okay, Mr. Hammond, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, a lot of this is surrounded with common ground, too, to the rear of most of these lots. If you look both on the east side and the west side of the main street there. So the lots,
Yeah,
I guess
conceivably,
you could make
right.
them.
You could make them bigger by making them deeper and decreasing your common ground. That's correct. You could do that.
Okay, Mr. Cronin, are there,
They're going to appear to be much larger than they are because it's not going to be 6,600 square foot lots all in a grid format where it would be very dense all right together. 'Cause what I'm looking at is a lot of them are, as Dave just pointed out, up against the common ground. It's
Steve, you got a comment? Mr. Owen, Don?
If memory serves me right, and Joe, you were here at the time, I believe at the time the development was proposed, there was no public entity that was in place to handle the water and wastewater. And I think as a consequence, it is now a system that is privately owned and regulated by the Public Service Commission, if I remember correctly. I assume that Mr. Musler and Mr. Bellner have done the necessary calculations to make sure that those systems are still adequate at the number of residential homes they want to put in there. So that I don't think is an issue. But my question really is that in the way the PSC would probably tackle this, in order to pay for the system's operation, pay off capital cost, they would have to devise a rate structure that would be in place to perform those tasks. In which case, if the developer walked away and there was only a few houses there, I would assume that those rates are pretty high right now for those residents. And I'm making the assumption that when you add these residential lots to that, you have the opportunity to perhaps drive those rates down for those existing customers. But if Mr. Musler or Mr. Bellner know the answers to that, I'd like to hear them.
I'm not sure that I do, Mr. Bamer. I only know what the folks at MDNR have told me. First of all, this plant is under an operating permit issued by the state, as is the water system. They are both regulated under operating permits by MDNR. The treatment plant has not ever been made operational. It was sized for the entire development. And because there's only a portion of the development that has actually been constructed and transferred to homeowners, there is insufficient sewage to operate that plant in an economical manner.
Right.
Therefore, they don't operate it. Alliance is the operator of the plant. They pump and haul the sewage to another treatment facility, and they tell me that they lose every month because the rates for the homeowners are fixed based upon the ultimate build-out. And, you know, from the operational standpoint of the sewage treatment plant, they need to get to a certain number of homes in order to run the plant and to make that more economical for them.
So you would agree that adding homes with available capacity could help with that rate structure?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get out.
What he said was that Alliance is already under a contract. It's not going to change the homeowner's standpoint.
Well, sooner or
No.
later it will, Councilman.
The PSC would regulate that based upon its use. They're going to have to prove to the PSC. The
But right now,
MDNR
they're-
regulates the waste, but the rates are regulated by the public.
Right now, the
service.
homeowners are further ahead because they're they're already covered under a contract.
They're getting a bargain right now.
Well, no, they had an increase a few years back, because I got
Absolutely.
complaint letters about it, and I wrote a letter to the PSC, but apparently the rate didn't go up that much because I never heard anything back from the residents, so I think they were happy. But I think, Joe, to answer your question, we have something like this in St. Paul too. Duckett Creek built an MBR plant, there's not enough homes in a TR Hughes subdivision out there. And from what I understand, the membranes are very expensive that they buy in these plants. So they don't buy the membranes until they really have enough capacity to do it. And they're pumping that one in St. Paul just like this one. So that's pretty common. But I think as they add more capacity, they're going to have to buy more membranes for this thing to function. And who owns that plant now? That does not, the developer does not own this, right?
It's not Mr.
If I can make a statement.
Probably the bank.
Zero American owns the treatment plant.
Okay.
One last question. All right, is Don Collier still involved in this subdivision?
No, sir. He's not.
Okay, well, that's a good thing.
I think after all we said, I think I'd like to hear what Harry Bogart has to say somewhere along the line too. Okay. Okay.
All right, but we got to wrap this up. And so are you going to write a substitute bill on the commercial portion?
I would like to
or work
talk
with
to Mr. Myers more. I would like to see, talk to Mr. Musler about the change to the west side of that. And then I would like to get traffic accident reports from the sheriff's, or the police department rather. And I don't know if Craig or anybody with transportation can help us with you know, any capabilities of traffic flow at that at the existing intersection now. I know when they put this development in, they raised Dietrich Road and they put an acceleration lane in. I just don't know if that's sufficient now, 10, 11 years later. And I'd like to know that.
Well, you're going to ask, you're asking for.
Well, we're not
the-
voting on it tonight. We got 2 weeks. Okay, I work quick. I think try to get it done in 2 weeks. If we can't get it done in 2 weeks with their permission, maybe we will table. But let's see if we can't get it done. This man probably wants to start selling those lots. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
Just to clarify quickly a legal point, and I'm not sure myself, so I'm going to ask Harold. You said something to the effect that we're a blank slate, and I may have misunderstood what you meant, but if this whole PUD goes away, there's an underlying zoning on that property.
Well, there is an underlying zoning, for sure. And right now it is C1, and if this bill passes, the underlying zoning on the eastern portion will change to an R zoning.
Yeah, but that's my point. If this thing doesn't go through, then right now it's just C1 and they could do whatever, any permitted use under C1.
There is also, there is then sitting on top of the C1 is an overlay zoning district, PUD, which is part and parcel. It's wrapped up with a preliminary development plan and plat. And that layer sitting on top of the zoning is partly a zoning measure and partly a preliminary plat. To the extent that it's a preliminary plat, it is time sensitive.
Okay. Harry, did you want to add anything?
So what are both of them? I'll try to be very brief. I really don't. I introduced myself earlier. Do I need to do it again? Okay. And my question originally was, tonight, it seems like we've started out talking about the 28 acres in the eastern portion, which, in talking with the community people, we're glad. We're glad about that. I think that's a good thing. I like the development plans there. Sure, we would like to see larger than 6,600 square feet, but it is what it is. A good part of it is probably due to the topography and the layout of the engineering requirements. We understand that. We also understand that it takes X amount of rooftops for you to be able to make any money and to further develop, put in streets, do road repairs or increases in the road intersections and things like that. So I think we're happy campers over the eastern portion. Our concern for the future is absolutely the western portion of that. Get that C1 off of there. We want that as residential. You've indicated that you're good with that. You don't care what it is. The only thing that we would cordially ask, is that if and when the development of the western portion does begin and take place, if there's any way to look at the boundaries that join up to the folks that have 3-acre lots with homes, which a lot of them have built their homes at the very back so that they would have all of the wooded and the nature in the frontal area of their property. Now their homes will be very close to the boundaries of the western portion there. If there's any way that possibly, Mr. Cronin had explained it to me that they did this in St. Paul, is in the outer fringe that borders those properties, if you could enlarge those lots somewhat to make them more congruent with the adjoining neighbors, and then maybe cluster them a little smaller as you move inward till you get down to what you have already developed. Because those, I don't know what the lot sizes are on them, but I know right as you turn in the entrance right there, where they had to do blasting to make the lots, they could play ping pong out their back door off of that wall. You know, I mean, it's close and they're small. So we understand that, and I'm going to guess that some of those lots are probably down in the 65 to 7,000 square foot range. Just looking at them, I'm not an engineer, but with that being said, I'm done.
All right, thank you. Joe, let's wrap this up.
One more thing I have a question for, and this is just something to think about, we can talk about, because I like to get this wrapped up in 2 weeks. Let's get this moving on. Mr. Myers, I don't think there's a problem with, and I'm not an engineer, but I don't think there's probably a problem with the existing additional traffic from the 84 homes on the east side. Okay, I think that's probably, Harry, you drive it every day, you're shaking your heads probably with it too.
There are times, I mean, the 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning and the 3 p.m. to the 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening, it's a nightmare getting across there.
If we ditch the R1 zoning for the west side, can we also put in development agreement that when the west side develops, there'll be a new traffic study at that point in time as needed?
Exactly.
That's
Joe,
something we could do and get this moving, right?
Why don't you get together with them and see
get
if
it
they
done?
try to just come up with an agreement and then offer a substitute bill and then present it to the council and we'll go from there.
I think the community out there is pleased that we have somebody now that is as willing to work with us as what we were. I mean, it's a far cry better than getting flipped off out of a helicopter window.
Harry, I remember that. Thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to the next bill. Moving on to 4220.
Bill number 4220, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by John White and Michael Klinghammer. An ordinance authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute documentation for acceptance of a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to fund 100% of the projected total costs of acquiring and demolishing 3 residential structures, sustaining severe and repetitive loss in flood hazard zones of unincorporated St. Charles County, and further authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute documents and perform acts that may be required for purchasing and demolishing those structures.
I got a question for Robert. On these, Robert, are these, I don't know where this area, is this up north, like by, where's this by?
Let's see, the one I'm familiar with is actually south of 94. It's one of the tributaries of the Missouri River. I'm trying to remember which one.
On Avon Court, isn't it?
Avon Place, 630 Avon Place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are these mandatory buyouts?
No. No, they're not mandatory. It's a program where an offer is made and if the homeowner is agreeable. All of these homes have had repetitive losses, and they've received made a number of repetitive claims for insurance, for flood insurance.
So are these people, are they like you're saying 630 Avon Place, that's down in Defiance on the Fenwell Osage Creek? Is that where you said it is, or you said south of 90, what's?
No, I think Avon is south of 94 from memory.
Okay, so are any of these, are these people agreeable to this? Do they live in these houses?
They want it, they need it desperately.
Yeah, and it's 100% funded by FEMA.
And it's, yeah, right, it's 100% funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this property we're talking about, there's a neighbor adjacent to her that floods worse than this property, and she didn't qualify. And so she's going to be stuck there as an island, you know, with flooding constantly, and we have no way of helping her.
Okay, that's all I just wondered. Any other questions for Mr. Meyer? Okay, moving on to the next bill, 4221.
Bill number 4221, requested by John Greipsey, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Wentzville for road improvements needed to support the operations of a new logistics optimization center that will supply auto parts and provide other services to the Wentzville GM plant.
Any questions or comments on 4221? Yes, Mr. Cronin.
This is in my district, and I talked to Don briefly about it. Later today, I got this, which is all full of fine print detailing this, and I scanned as much as I would work today, but this is kind of very similar to the project we debated last week in O'Fallon. This $2.5 million that we're given from transportation sales tax money is enabling Wentzville to proceed with this project. Whether or not this project is in the best interests of Wentzville, the devil's in the details, and I think I want to have at least a conversation with them. Wentzville is proposing giving $43 million, finances with $43 million worth of bonds. So they're basically, their populace is going in debt for $43 million for this warehouse that's a speculative warehouse for a Kansas City developer. Additionally, all the stuff that we heard about from St. Peter's at last meeting about pilots and payments in lieu of taxes and tax abatements, this is in there too. This has got a 34% abatement of property taxes for 10 years. Additionally, there's no sales tax collected on any of the building materials, okay? So I would like to hear from some of the political entities that are not getting sales tax out of this deal, including the county. For our $2.5 million road project, this thing's only going to generate for the county $159,000 in tax revenue over 10 years. I think the road project is a good project. The problem I've got is that road project enables the Wentzville to go into debt $43 million. It gives tax abatement for property taxes to these folks that are building this warehouse. And then it's also given him a sales tax break on all the building materials that are going in to build this facility. I think we're giving them the candy store and the keys to the candy store and a firstborn son on this deal, and I'm not so certain it's the best deal. So I want to read the details. I really would appreciate when we have to vote on something that's this monumental for a district like mine. I heard Mike's comments earlier today regarding that. This is a big project, and to get this much data couple hours before the meetings is a tough one to go through. So, I mean, I'd like to spend more time doing this, learning more about this with Mr. Boehmer. I'm pretty familiar with municipal bonding. I know how that works. I want to find out from the Wentzville Alderman if they realize everything that I see in this document. And I just want to give the, sound out that I don't know. It's kind of like the last project. There's good parts of this. Helping General Motors and creating 800 jobs is a good thing. Having a municipality in our county go $43 million in debt and giving away a lot of tax money in some instances that isn't theirs, I'm not certain that is a good thing. And the other question as far as 800 jobs is, are those 800 new jobs that are moving here? Or are these 800 jobs for this warehouse that are coming from other industrial facilities in this county? If a company moves out of North Central Industrial Park in O'Fallon and moves into this new warehouse in Wentzville, I'm not certain those are real gain jobs. So, Mr. Boehmer, I mean, I appreciate the time you spent explaining this for me. We had about 5 or 10 minutes, and I need to know a lot more about this before I'm ready to support it.
Mr.
Okay?
Chairman, could I clarify a couple of points?
Yes, sir.
First of all, the development agreement that Mr. Cronin is referring to there is an agreement between the municipality of Wentzville and the developer. We have nothing to do with that. We don't negotiate that. We don't get involved in the discussions. But what we do require is that as a economic development application to the county road board, we ask the municipality, who will have the contract with, not the developer. We ask them to submit a lot of information on that application, which I believe is accompanying that document. We want to know, for instance, obviously, if they're proposing a TIF that would affect the road board taxes that would be collected, which we think is an obvious no-go. If they're going to take our tax dollars away from us, we don't want to fund a project like that. So we ask for certain pieces of information. And again, we're not we're not part of that development agreement. This will be a contract between ourselves and Wentzville. You'll also note in there that we did put a contingency that if the building isn't built within a certain period of time, that we don't pay for the road. It's kind of like the deal with the West Clay extension. There were certain requirements that have to be met before we would agree to fund that 50% of that project. There are going to be 800 jobs, is what the developer is estimating. But this development is not going to, this warehouse, this $1.3 million square foot warehouse is not going forward unless and until the developer reaches an agreement with General Motors. Upon that agreement, General Motors will put personnel in there. The developer is going to be nothing but a landlord in this case. But he's not going to be a landlord until they've got the agreement on moving that in there with General Motors. We can't guarantee that they might steal a worker from someplace else in O'Fallon or St. Peter's, but that simply creates another job opening for somebody else if they do move those over there. In this particular case, we believe that an investment of this size warrants our $2.5 million in our contract with Wentzville without judging whether or not they've cut a good deal. On the issue of the sales tax on the building materials, we're not going to lose a dime there because the developer estimates that all those building materials are going to come from someplace else, not from St. Charles County. So we don't see like we're going to lose it in that particular case at all, but I do think you're right to raise the subject.
In the cost and benefit analysis, I skimmed through this, it says Wentzville School District alone, it's costing $5.3 million. Now, we heard Mr. Music at last meeting talk about about pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. The payments in lieu of taxes are supposed to be $3.5 million if they get them and they collect them. So either way, the school district loses $1.8 million, even if they do collect the pilots. And we heard Mr. Music say, watch pilots. What I'm getting at is if we're concerned about the taxed entities for Lakeside 370 losing money, we ought to be just as concerned about taxed entities losing money for this development. I'd like to hear from Wentzville School District and see if they're good with this. I'd like to hear from some of the other folks that are going to lose money for this project.
It's absolutely fine.
I think that's a fair question to ask them.
Absolutely. And I will add that in an arrangement like that, what you typically see in St. Charles County is a 50-50 split. So in this case, a 34-66 is a pretty good deal. I mean, judging from other projects.
And the other thing I'd like to find out, Don, is this company's done these warehouses all over, okay? When they did one in Kansas City, for instance, did they get the red carpet rolled out on them like this deal, okay? Or did they pay more than that? Because it seems to me like they're getting, I mean, the Wentzville's financing the building. We're paying, West and Wentzville paying for the road. They're getting a break on the sales tax. They're getting a break on the property tax. Hell, it looks to me like the only thing they're buying is the land. I'm not certain if they're even buying that. So I just want to make sure that we're not giving them a whole lot better deal than they got elsewhere in Missouri, I guess in Kansas City.
Well, I would stress to you, Councilman Cronin, that we're not giving them anything other than we're agreeing to fund half of the road project. And Wentzville is on the hook to pay us back if that doesn't come about.
Okay.
They have an agreement or don't have an agreement with the developer. We asked for the information, but we're not judging that.
Okay.
I think all your questions are very good ones, actually.
Yeah.
And those are questions that we should know before we're voting on $2.5 million. And if some of the things he's saying is accurate, then that's giving people upper hand over other businesses that actually put in their own roads and so forth to their own facilities. So I'm not sure why. 800 jobs don't seem like a whole lot of jobs for that kind of money, especially for $43 million. But that doesn't, it does actually concern us because it's a tax base in St. Charles County. But so if Mr. Cronin, you want to make a motion to table until you get some information?
Well, it's his introduction. I think let's see how much we can get done in 2 weeks. I mean, Don, I don't want to slow this down. This is an introduction. Let's see how many of these questions we can get answered in 2 weeks. I mean,
ask away.
Okay, you got it, buddy.
Are you going to? Can you write those questions out and present them? So
I'll tell you what I thought. I'm going to send some.
I think the councilman should go to Wentzville and talk to his constituents about it to get his assurances, so there's nothing filtered through this.
That's the first thing I'm going to do.
Because it's not our development agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Steve.
I think nobody here has a better record of being against these kinds of handouts, especially if it's a TIF. But these are not TIFs. These are Chapter 100s and 353s. And actually, I'm opposed to them as well, unless they're creating new jobs. And Mr. Cronin was absolutely correct to answer, is this just going to, take jobs from somewhere else? Well, this is the type of thing is not. It might take jobs from Kansas City, might take jobs from Detroit or Ohio or something, but it's not just moving jobs around, it's creating a new 800 new jobs, which is why I'm even considering supporting this. So, but we'll get whatever information you need.
Does it have anything to do with another plant in Fenton that's being just moving employees up from Fenton? No. Okay. Okay, any other questions on 4221? All right, moving on to 4222.
Bill number 4222, requested by John Greipsey, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Weldon Spring for the Weldon Spring Parkway.
Any questions or comments on 4222? Moving on to 4223.
Quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Similar to the question was asked last meeting about the ratio of the city paying whatever, 90-10 or 80-20, whatever that is. This is a change that essentially is doing the same thing. Because they're getting additional federal funds, we're allowing them to reduce their share. I just wanted to point that out.
All right, thanks, Don. Moving on to 4223.
Bill number 4223, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement for financial assistance, grant agreement number 2015002 between St. Charles County and the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District for receipt of funds in an amount up to $50,000 and amending the 2015 budget adopted by ordinance 14-109 by appropriating additional funds in the general fund budget, environmental, public health, and protection.
Any questions or comments on 4223? Seeing none, moving on to 4224.
Bill number 4224, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance amending sections 230.010.a and 230.030.a ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, relating to the food code.
Any questions or comments on 4224? Let's see. Anybody got any questions on this? No? Moving on to 4225.
Bill number 4225, requested by Scott Lewis, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance amending the 2015 budget adopted by ordinance 14-109 to add one additional pay grade 10 bailiff within the St. Charles County Sheriff Department.
Any questions or comments on 4225? Okay, Scott, now it's your turn. No, I'm kidding. Any questions? All right, moving on to 4226.
And this is over just under 3 pages, so I have to read the entire bill. Bill number 4226, requested by Dave Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement with the Cotterville Fire Protection District for tactical medics for the St. Charles County Regional SWAT Team. Whereas the St. Charles County Regional SWAT Team, is formed by the partnership of certain participating municipalities of St. Charles County on behalf of their police departments and St. Charles County on behalf of its police department. And whereas the SWAT team is dedicated to serving and protecting citizens within the entire county and is empowered to do so pursuant to the authority of the chief of police. And whereas recognizing the dangerous conditions and the conduciveness for injury during a tactical police deployment, an agreement for the provision of on-scene medical support is desired for the SWAT team. And whereas the Cotterville Fire Protection District, CFPD, currently provides tactical medics to serve as part of the SWAT team, and both the SWAT team and CFPD wish to continue that relationship. And whereas Section 70.220 RSMO authorizes an intergovernmental agreement between political subdivisions for the purposes herein set out. Now therefore be it ordained by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the county executive is hereby authorized to execute an agreement with the Cotterville Fire Protection District for tactical medics for the St. Charles County Regional SWAT Team. Section 2, the agreement shall be substantially the same in form and content as that form agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein. Section 3, compliance with all the terms of the agreement shall be the responsibility of the St. Charles County Police Department. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of its passage and approval, and such agreement shall be valid upon their lawful execution as required by Chapter 70 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri.
Any questions or comments on 4226?
You couldn't say that in less than 3 pages, Dave.
I can't remember anything after the front page.
Moving on to 4227.
Bill number 4227, requested by Dave Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the chief of police to accept a donation to the Police Department Division of Emergency Management from the St. Charles Regional Drug Task Force.
Any questions or comments on 4227? Seeing none, 4228.
Bill number 4228, requested by Dave Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute agreements with federal law enforcement departments and other political subdivisions for the St. Charles County Police Department.
Any questions or comments? Moving on to 4229.
Bill number 4229, requested by Craig Tukowski, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement with the St. Charles County Emergency Services Association Incorporated for the training of personnel and rescue dogs at highway department sites.
Any questions or comments on 4229? Seeing none, moving on to table bills. Are there any table bills to be removed from the table?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to remove 4207 from the table.
4207, have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 4207. Do you have any comments, Mike?
No, I just asked for council's support on passage of 4207 as presented.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Don. Any questions, anybody? All right, Donna.
This is for final passage then for Bill number 4207, an ordinance designating and recognizing the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau as the state fiscal year 2016 through 2018 representative destination marketing organization, DMO, for tourism in St. Charles County as required for participation in the Missouri Division of Tourism's Cooperative Marketing Program for the state fiscal year 2016 through 2018 funding cycle, and authorizing a contract between the county and the Convention and Visitors Bureau in the amount of $35,000. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Okay, Bill 4207 is passed. That concludes the bills. And now miscellaneous. Any comments? I have one. Does anybody else have any? What Steve was talking about was each year the St. Charles County Prosecuting Attorney's Office holds a poster contest for the county's middle school age children. Have you guys seen the posters that were out in the hallway? And this year the Sager Middle School was invited to submit posters, and the year's theme was citizenship. So these posters were designed by very talented sixth graders. And that's what those posters are.
That's very good.
You got any, Steve, you want to add anything to that?
No, sir, that's fine.
Okay, that was it. Mike, what else?
I have a very talented sixth grader in the audience tonight, so I can appreciate that.
All right, good. Okay, is there a motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.